you doing today? We are here for a little bit different type of webinar today. This is our strategic marketing webinar, and our topic, as you can clearly see on the screen, business-to-business marketing tactics. This is one that just a quick perusal of our attendee list today shows that a little bit less interest in this from remodelers, and understandably so, but a lot more interest in this from some of the other non-remodeler types that tend to hang out on the MYM Insider webinar. So welcome to all of you who have made the time to show up. We've got some interesting things to talk about, and I think if you have any element of business-to-business selling in your company, I think this can be tremendously powerful. So getting past gatekeepers, getting the right person's attention, making sure the message gets delivered is the overall overarching theme, but let's go into the details. Let me make sure my technology is working here. Okay, it appears to be. One thing I've always liked about business-to-business marketing is it means you can more easily target your market. Remember early on in my consulting career, one of my clients was a company called Al Banker Insurance. And they worked with mostly automobile insurance, and they would advertise on radio and television, and they were blanketing the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area with these messages, trying to figure out who were the people that needed insurance at a given moment, have them call. And they were very successful at it, and it's very doable. But interestingly, a few years later, they added a type of insurance that they became initially the wholesaler, and then after a while they started their own insurance company, and they went out and they were selling this insurance through other insurance agencies around the state of Texas, and they found that their target market went from millions of people to simply thousands of insurance agencies, and they were able to grow that business extraordinarily fast. Now, the first business that went business to consumer was large and profitable, but what was astounding to me was how quickly, based on having a relatively small target market, they were able to grow the second business that was more of a business-to-business type scenario. Same industry of insurance, just a little bit different tactic. Here's the bad news of B2B marketing. Most of your prospects are already firmly entrenched with your competitors. Now, you may have some newfangled fancy thing that nobody's ever heard of, but likely that's not the case. You're selling the same kinds of stuff that other people are selling. So you have to be willing to unseed the incumbent vendor. So there's 4 keys to successful business-to-business marketing. Here they are. Number 1 is precise targeting. 2 is excellent case building. 3, high frequency. And then the one that everybody hates the most, number 4, is patience. So we're going to talk about each of these as we go through our presentation today, and I think you'll like what we have to say. So take some notes, and if you have any questions, jot them down. Feel free to input them into your question-asking thingy-bobber. Okay, and let's talk about targeting to start. So there's 2 kinds of target markets: defined target markets and non-defined target markets. This is what I was sort of alluding to just a moment ago with the insurance agency example. A defined target market is one that you can pinpoint specific companies and put them on a mailing list. You'll focus direct marketing efforts on them primarily through the mail, and the reason through the mail is because that's the best way to reach them. They're not a sufficiently large enough market, generally speaking, to reach through mass media, broadcast media, something like that. Then we've got non-defined target market, where you can't pinpoint specific companies, and therefore you need to generate leads. We'll talk about that one in just a minute. But once you do have a lead generated, then you go into nurture mode, or what we call hopper systems. So defined target markets, pinpointing a specific company, putting them on the list. In most cases, here's what I found. You'll already have a list that your salespeople are calling on. It blows my mind how often I'll go in a consulting environment to a company that is trying to set up a business-to-business marketing type of a situation that has historically been a sales organization, And when I ask them to pull a list of all the people that they are proactively trying to sell to, they really struggle to get their hands on a list. It's usually decentralized. It's happening through individual salespeople. It's not organized in any kind of cohesive kind of a way. And it's just amazing that a company could be in business, in some cases for decades, as a selling organization without having a unified, centralized list of these people that they're calling on. But it happens all the time. So in some cases, you have to buy a list from a broker. That's okay. You can do that by industry codes, company size, things like that. There's lots of brokers and list options for you out there. The point of this call is not to get into those details. Have somebody systematically call the list and find the appropriate person. Now, this is the hard part. You don't want to just get a list. You want to make sure that within that list, you've got somebody who is making sure that the information is accurate on the list. And really, the only way I found to do that effectively is to call up on the phone and just verify that information. It's a pain in the butt. It takes a long time. It costs money. But if you're going to spend money sending stuff to companies, a couple of things. Number one, we're going to assume that the amount of sale, either initial and or ongoing, is significant. You're just going to have to put some time and effort and money into this. Okay? That's how it works. And then we could have a discussion about should you use an employee or a call center. I don't want to go into that detail right now. Define target markets. Don't be afraid to put multiple contacts per company in your mailing program. That may be the case. Maybe you need to talk to the purchasing manager. Maybe you need to talk to the operations people, or whatever it happens to be in your case. Get as many email addresses as you can. They're good to have, but in a lot of cases, they're going to play a secondary role in your success. Now, that's not always true. And I don't want to put this on here and make it look like, well, email is worthless, because it's not worthless. But you'll see as we get going here that we're going to talk about putting together very definitive, hard-hitting, high-frequency mailing programs that are designed over time to wear people down. Now, you can do this on email. The problem with email is that all it takes is somebody hitting unsubscribe, and then that's it. You have no chance to get them in the future. Or even if they don't unsubscribe, it's not always necessarily easy to get your email to even land in the inbox the right way. It might get spam filtered out. Or even if it does land in the inbox, it's easy to overlook, to dismiss, or to otherwise not pay attention to. I'm not suggesting that direct mail is always paid high attention to, but at least you can be fairly certain that it's going to get to the intended recipient, or at least their screener. All right, so by definition, you are going to be running a direct mail campaign. And here's kind of the way I approach this. What were your other options again? Sometimes I get into a discussion with business-to-business sellers, and we start talking about the concepts and principles that I'm discussing here today. And we get into this discussion of gathering this list, verifying the list like I just mentioned, and then putting together this high-frequency mailing. And they get a little upset, and they say, well, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if it's efficient. What if people don't call? How long is it going to take? And the answer is a long time. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. But I look at it and I say, well, what was your other option? What else were you planning on doing? Well, we're going to send salespeople out. Well, of course. Salespeople are good. Here's the problem with salespeople. If you've got 1,000 people on your list and you've got 5 salespeople, that's going to take them a long time to get around to make those rounds. And even if they do, that doesn't necessarily mean that the people on the list want to see you or it's a good time to talk to you. So we've got to be softening the soil up, loosening it up a little bit, in addition to salespeople with this marketing. That's the whole idea, okay? Now, what about getting past the gatekeepers with direct mail? Now, that's a big issue. If I have a list of CEOs that I'm trying to get a hold of, or any kind of executive position, what if they've got someone that screens their mail, takes it out? And I would actually revert to the question above, which says, what were your other options again? Because if you think about it, there really, sorry about that, there just really aren't that many other options. So I'm not that worried about gatekeepers. Here's what I've also found. A lot of times gatekeepers can be very powerful influencers. So even if the gatekeeper is screening stuff out and you're making a strong case over time for your products or services, that gatekeeper can hopefully have some sort of input when the topic of whatever it is you sell comes up in the future. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying it always works. I'm saying don't completely minimize it and saying, well, the gatekeeper is just going to throw this stuff out, so why even try? Okay, so just think about that a little bit. One good advantage of email is if you can get the right email address, you can actually get your emails past the gatekeepers. But again, that unsubscribe button is alluringly close and easy to use. Okay. Okay. So this whole thing, it's not super sexy, but it's super effective. Okay. It's not super sexy. A lot of times companies don't like this. I've got many, many examples where we've gotten 5 or 10 pieces of mail into these campaigns and the company just quits because they don't see it. They're not seeing the return. They don't think it's working. They don't think it will work, and they quit. But I'm going to debunk that here as we go through this a little bit. Let's flip over and talk about non-defined target markets. Lead generation through appropriate channels, whether that be direct mail, direct email, business-to-business publications, trade journals, where you put an advertisement there. Sometimes broadcast media, general print publications. I was actually driving this morning, and I heard an ad on the radio that I've heard before that was geared towards contractors, and it was from a company called LT Smart Side. It's a siding company, and they're trying to get contractors to buy their particular type of siding. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because the percentage of people listening to that radio station that are involved in purchasing siding at a wholesale level, like contractors, has got to be really pretty small. But I think they also realize that during drive time, maybe it's a little bit smaller, but during the day, maybe that percentage goes a little bit higher, and there are, a sufficiently large number of contractors that it's worth doing that. And I know it must. I'm assuming it's worth it because I've heard those LT Smart Side commercials for years on that station. So who knows? Maybe I'll buy some. In these cases, using information offers is critical. I'll discuss report types a little bit. I don't want to get too much into that. It'll bog us down. But scripts and qualification questions, here's the point of all of this, is that if you do generate a lead, you can then put it into your hopper system, and you can start to nurture them. And now you treat them like a defined target market, which was the first type of target market. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully it does. Sometimes there will be now buyers that you can close right away, but in many cases, you're just generating leads for the sole purpose of nurturing them into the future, identifying likely prospects and then nurturing them on into the future, okay? Now, here's the key thing. If you can't close the leads right away, don't worry. Now, guess what most people do if they don't close the leads right away? They panic. They absolutely panic. But we're going to run some numbers on this, okay? The leads are going to go into the hopper system. They're going to be treated like prospects from the defined target market. I just mentioned that. Now, the next 3 steps. See, this was only one step, was targeting your market. The next 3 steps are excellent case building, high-frequency contact, and patience and persistence, okay? High-frequency contact, by definition, is going to require patience and persistence. We want to build a solid case. Let's talk about case building. So lead generation, we talked about that a minute ago in the case of non-defined target market, right? So we just use the normal MLM methodology to generate leads, whether that be advertising or whatnot. Then we want to put together the mailings and hopper mailings, and I always recommend using postcards. Why using postcards? Now, I'm talking about following up on an ongoing basis with business-to-business defined target markets, defined either because we have them on a list or we've generated a list through lead-generating activities. Why postcards? Number one, what I call left-hand, right-hand trash can. This means that the postcard goes from the person's left hand into their right hand and on into the trash can or recycling bin, as the case may be. And as that card is passing from left to right to trash, if we've got a good headline and we've got a good identity and we're building a strong case, there's going to be information that's going to impact them in that very short amount of time. And I know that it's the cumulative effect of multiple contacts and frequent contacts that's going to make the difference. I like to use big postcards, 6-inch by 11-inch, have a consistency in look, feel, color, so that there's a brand, so that the next time they see the card, and the 3rd and the 8th and the 13th and the 27th time they see that postcard, they start to realize, hey, this is that company again. We don't want every single card to look so different that they don't even recognize that the same people are reaching out to them all the time. There's an element of branding and consistency that is critical. It's pretty inexpensive to send postcards also. And the neat thing about postcards is you can focus in on one hot button per postcard. So you don't have to build your entire case every time you reach out to somebody. You can talk about one of your key elements, and then the next postcard another, and another, and another, and another. And what you would need to do is look at this from a campaigning standpoint, meaning if you're going to hit one of your business-to-business prospects every single week for 50 weeks out of the year, how many times do you want to repeat? So in other words, do you need 25 unique postcards that repeat twice, or do you want 12 postcards that repeat 4 times? And regardless of the number, how do you want to allocate the discussion on hot buttons? In other words, which hot buttons should be 10% or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50% of the messaging? And you have to work through all that. The purpose of this call is not to define those things for you exactly, but to give you the elements that you need to think through. It's really as simple as saying, okay, I need to figure out how many things I'm going to send, and then how I'm going to allocate the number of discussions on various hot buttons, and then you create the materials, okay? Remember, this is a tactical marketing call. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about messaging and strategic marketing issues, okay? Let's look at a couple examples. These are ones that I put together for a company that was reaching out to physical therapists, trying to recruit them in to become partners with this company, which is called U.S. Physical Therapy, to partner to open new clinics in various parts of the country. So take a look at this from the standpoint of the receiver, which is a physical therapist, trying to be recruited by this company called U.S. Physical Therapy to start in partnership with U.S. Physical Therapy clinics, okay? So it comes in the mail, and this is what I mean by left-hand, right-hand trash can. The postcard says 0, zilch, nada, startup cost for your own clinic when partnering with U.S. Physical Therapy. And chances are high that the first time somebody receives that postcard, they're going to throw it in the trash. And then along comes number 2. Love being a physical therapist, but hate that your income is capped. Our clinic partners average over $120,000. If you've got a strong referring physician base, we've got the capital you need to own your own clinic. Let's open a clinic together. We provide all the capital, you call the shots. And what you're going to start to see as you look at these is a case being built for this company and doing business with them. Imagine you had a rich uncle who gave you the money to start your own clinic. We'll do just that. I heard that U.S. Physical Therapy makes the money, all the money in the partnership. Not true. Our partners typically make over half the money. And then if you flip the card over, it looks something like this. The ultimate win-win partnership. We put up the cash, you call the shots, and then you can read this very quickly via the headline funnel. You'll be compensated handsomely for your efforts, and then we see the bullet points. Your name goes on the clinic. You treat patients the way you want. We pay you a guaranteed salary, build the type of clinic in which you want to work, and then you see there an information report. It says information package. Let's open a clinic together. Call or go online and request a copy of our report. It's no cost. It's an information packet, or you can join us for an information session that we hold on webinars, and all you need to do is go to ownyourown.clinic.com and register for one of those webinars. See how this works? And we're trying to generate these leads, okay? This is a campaign that we put together years ago for Dell, of computer fame, as they were going into the education market. And these are actually a little bit smaller postcards. I believe these were, what were these? Oh, actually, this is not Dell. My bad. We built these on the same chassis as we built Dell. This was a printing company called DocuStar. So send this out to large companies that use a lot of color offset digital printing. Not offset, but digital printing. Why do we have to print 10,000 brochures to get a decent price per piece when we really only need 500 of them? How can we prevent our sales reps from running down to their local quick print and creating documents that are wrong and potentially misleading? Is there a way to guarantee the quality, consistency, and compliancy, I don't even know if it's a word, of all printed collateral we are using? Would personalization of our brochures and mailers really make much of a difference in results? Why can't we ever find our files? Oh yeah, they're scattered across 5 different systems. Of course I've heard of one-to-one marketing, but isn't it too expensive to execute in real life? Then you flip that card over. The technology for personalizing direct mail exists, so why aren't you using it? And no, it does not cost a fortune. And then it has a free technology review. And if you go to their website, 8-minute review, you'll see that there's a quick survey you can take. This is a way to capture leads so that we can now follow up with them. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through those reports because I don't want to spend time on that. It's not, we've got other things that I'd rather cover. What I do want to cover is this high frequency contact, okay? So we talked about targeting, talked about generating leads. Now we're going to talk about high frequency contact and staying in touch with these people over time. So let's take a look at what we call the educational spectrum. On the left-hand side, we've got the point where somebody starts thinking about buying what you sell, or in the case that they're already buying it and you're trying to compete against a common vendor, it's the point when they first start thinking about changing vendors. Over here is where they actually buy, give you the money. And so we need to ask this question: why would somebody not buy from you right away? Now, I'm going to illustrate this with a little story. This is a company that we dealt with, I'm going to say 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly. It was an interesting company. It was a company that that provided service for point-of-sale printers in retail environment, okay? So, for instance, if you go to Target and you check out, they're going to print out a receipt and they're going to hand it to you. Well, this company is the company that would provide the printers, that would print the receipts, and they would perform repairs on them. Because, as you can imagine, if your name is Target and you've got how many ever 1,000 stores, and each store has whatever 20, 30, 40, 50 of these printers, they're going to be breaking with some frequency. So they had some really neat ways to handle repairs where they would minimize the downtime. They made it easy. It was inexpensive. But the incumbent vendor was a little company called IBM, or more specifically, EDS, which is a subsidiary of IBM. And or was it EDS? Anyway, it was EDS. Regardless of that, big company, they had huge market share, and this little company was trying to come in and take a bite out of them, okay? Now, the little company had landed a couple of really big accounts. One of them was a major national rental car company, and the other one was a major national hotel chain. And they had landed both of these accounts by almost happenstance of having relationships with those companies that they were able to sort of worm their way in there and get those relationships to take them on, okay? Here's why I'm telling you this. So let's just pause. Company's got an innovative service, it's better than the incumbent vendors, cheaper, faster, better, blah, blah, blah. They've got a couple of national accounts, but there's another probably 1,000 national accounts that they could go after. And the guy told me one of the accounts that they wanted to go after was Target, as an example. And, you know, Kohl's and Chipotle and everything else you can think of, but Target. And I had to ask this guy, if you send a postcard with your company's information, and it's awesome, why would Target not buy from you after seeing your postcard 1 or 2 or 3 times? Okay? And keep that question in mind as we go through this, okay? Their current situation is fine in their current opinion. In other words, they don't have any pain. People don't usually make changes when there's no pain. They just got the idea. They need more time to process it. They want to look at other companies. They have objections that haven't been overcome. They think they can't afford it, or they don't like your company or your salesperson. You didn't have exactly what they're looking for. They didn't even know you were an option in many cases. These are some of the reasons why people don't buy right away. So what we've got to do is look at it and say, of course we're going to have to market to these companies a lot and high frequency and over time and exhibit patience. Because how else would we expect? See, here's the problem that we have. We're so arrogant sometimes in our businesses And we like to think, well, we're so good at what we do, and we're so much better than our competition, and we've got these two national accounts, the rental car and the hotel, or whoever your accounts are. I mean, fill in the blanks for your own situation. And we like to think, well, Target, oh my gosh, they could save so much money and time and hassle and effort, and it's such a better solution than the other guy, that we arrogantly think that because we have a solution, that everyone's going to, number one, notice it, number two, fall over dead in their tracks and scramble to hire you and give you money. And it's just not true. Think about all the things in your life that you purchase, and you're not a big multi-bazillion national corporation like Target or whatever. You're just a household or a person running your house. And think about the reasons you don't change your cereal brand, and why you go to the same 4 restaurants 80% of the time, and why you repetitively buy things over and over without really even giving credence or thought to any of your competitors, any of the competitors of the stuff that you use. And the reason is because why would you? And then something happens and you have a problem, or whatever the case is, and you start to have some pain, you start to look around, your radar goes up, and you start to look for a solution. But you know what? Most people's radars are not up. And the reason their radars are not up is because it's so much harder to have your radar up and be looking than it is to just sort of go with the status quo. This is called reality. This is called human nature. I wish I had a magic way to make a company like Target instantly understand that you're different and better and want to do business with you, even though they've never heard of you for the last 39 years until 10 seconds ago when they got a freaking single postcard from you. But I also would ask you to examine a question that I posed earlier on the call today, which is, what were your options? You say, well, I'll send my salesperson in there. Look, man, I've been a salesperson based on some projects that I've worked with some of my clients. I showed up at McDonald's Corporation trying to sell them some marketing campaigns. I looked at their procurement system. I've been in Bentonville, Arkansas, in the big old freaking massive room, or more like an airplane hangar, where they talk to new vendors. With one of my clients in the past that was selling electronic banking services, and it was so clear, this was back in the late 90s, that it was so much more efficient for Walmart to convert checks electronically into electronic payments instead of actually taking the check, and how much money they could save and how much better our service was than that they were currently doing. And we actually managed to get a meeting with them, and when we showed up, they treated us like one of 40 billion people trying to sell them crap. You know why? Because we were one of 40 billion people trying to sell them crap. And we forget that. And it's frustrating. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to harness the laws of nature and human motivation. I'm trying to say, this is the way things are. Let's go with it instead of against it. If it were easy to sell stuff to anybody you wanted to sell it to, then it doesn't even make sense. That proposition is nonsensical all by itself, because by definition, if it were easy, everybody would be doing it, but then everybody would be buying everything from everybody, which clearly is impossible. So, of course, it's hard to sell stuff. That's all I'm trying to say. Don't get upset about it. Don't buck it, and don't say, well, screw it, I don't even want to try. Well, that's not going to help. Run your numbers to find out how much you can afford to spend. This is critical. I've done a webinar in the last year or two. You can look it up on our insider portal called Allowable Marketing Cost Per Sale. You might want to go back and review that one. How much can you expect in sales from a now buyer? What is your allowable marketing cost per sale? Let me give you an example. Let's say you determine, using the formulas that I go through on the Allowable Marketing Cost Per Sale webinar that I'm not going to go through right now in detail, but let's say that you determine that 15% of the sales price, the sales price is $6,000. So you're willing to spend 15% of $6,000 or $900 on marketing costs. And you might look at that and say, well, I can't spend that much. I didn't say you could spend that much. I said, it's an example. Look at the word right there. EXAMPLE, colon, example. If your number is lower or higher, I don't really care. Fill in your own numbers, okay? Next, anticipated conversion per year. What percentage of the people that you reach out to with this kind of program will actually convert into a customer each year? Let's say it's 2%. So if you've got 1,000 people on your database that you're nurturing like this, and it's 2%, that means that you'll have 20 sales anticipated during that year, which means times $900, that gives you an $18,000 budget. So here's the question. If you have an $18,000 budget and 1,000 people to spend it on, how much can you spend on each person? Answer, $18. It's simple math. So if you were sending postcards at a rate of about 50 cents each, you could send about 36 cents. People come to me all the time and say, well, that seems like a lot of cents, 36. Shouldn't we, we send one per quarter now. Maybe if we did one per month, that would be aggressive. And I'm here to tell you, one per month is not aggressive. It's not aggressive. Let me tell you what's not aggressive. One per month. It's just not aggressive. If you think that's aggressive, I want you to check your own personal habits. I want you to think about somebody that sends you a postcard once per month in the mail. And you probably can't, because you know what? You don't notice it, because when you get a postcard once per month in the mail, it's another 30 days before you get the second one. Guess what? They completely forgot that you even existed, that you spent your money and sent them a postcard. They have no idea that you even exist by the time the 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 10th, 25th, and 59th arrive in your mailbox 59 months later. It's too long. Your kids don't ask you to go to Chuck E. Cheese once per month one time. They ask you to go 70 times in 10 minutes. That's how they get you to do crap. Is they ask you 70 times in 10 minutes. And then you finally say, okay, I'll do it. Just leave me alone. Yet when it comes to selling stuff, we want to send one postcard or two or one per month for 3 months. And we want people to just fall over and buy from us. And it's the dumbest, most idiotic thing I can think of. And you want me to change the laws of human nature that have been going on for 6,000 years, and I can't, because that's not what MYM is all about. Here's what MYM is all about: aligning your activities and behavior with what those human nature principles are, okay? It takes time and it takes patience. I was talking to a guy the other day. They run 4 stores for a home improvement company in 4 different markets all across the country. And their overall revenue is extraordinarily large. It's over $100 million in sales. And he was telling me about one particular market that they bought 4 years ago, and the guy that had been running it before had been running it for like 20 years or something, and had been doing radio and television in this market for something like 20 years. And he says, wow, for some reason, this particular market is sort of on autopilot. We get sales almost no matter what we do. And I said, I asked him about it, and he told me about the history. And I said, well, of course. They've been nurturing the market for 25 years now. Of course there's going to be harvest 25 years later. But here's the problem. If you start planting today, you can't harvest the crops that are going to spring up 10 years from now for 10 more years. So you better start now, and you better have a little bit of patience, okay? That's kind of the idea here. Now, we've talked about wall drugging before. Remember the idea of wall drugging, which is the story about putting 1,000 billboards next to the highway, and everybody sees them, and after a while, they just can't resist going to this place called Wall Drug. I'm not going to show that to you because, it's hopefully you already understand that concept. But interestingly, if you wall drug, here's why it works. The first thing is you're going to win by forfeit, meaning chances are good that your competitors don't put that much effort into it. Okay, so if you send a postcard, as an example, once a week instead of once a month or once a quarter, there's a pretty good chance your competitors are not doing that. So you're going to stand out just by being there more often, okay? Part of success is just showing up, right? But you got to show up consistently so they see you and they remember you. Consistency credit, okay? People assume that if you're the kind of company that can market frequently and a lot, then you must be probably good at what you do. I mean, is anybody really worried about Geico collapsing? And when you get in a car crash and you call Geico that they're not going to pick up the phone, you're going to get a busy signal, they're going to be out of business? Not really. Why? Well, because they advertise everywhere all the time. And we kind of get it after a while. Okay, they're going to be there. Accelerated discontentment. And this is the real key. The reason that frequency works is that you start to make their current situation seem worse and worse, and you offer them a shoulder to cry on. Okay, now this is the dumbest analogy I have. I got lots of analogies. You've been listening to me for a long time, you know I got lots and lots of analogies. This is the dumbest one I've got. It's the analogy of the high school cheerleader captain and the captain of the football team. And they're going out and they're dating and they're an item, right? It's the typical high school story. It's been in 1,000 movies. Most recently, I think, is Spider-Man. Okay, and here's what happens: she's good looking and she's going out with the captain of the football team, but he's kind of a jerk and he doesn't treat her real well, and he likes to hang out with his buddies and he makes jokes at her expense, and he kind of bosses her around, and she's, you know, just kind of tolerates it because, after all, she's the captain of the cheerleader squad, he's the captain of the football team. But secretly, and after a while, not so secretly, she doesn't really like this guy that much, and just it starts to wear on her. And in her moments of being sad and kind of crying about it, who does she go cry to? And she goes and she cries to the guy that she grew up with next door. They've been friends since they were 5 years old. He's kind of nerdy, he's kind of dorky, but he's got a good heart, and he's willing to listen, and he treats her with respect. And ultimately, she falls in love with the nerd next door, and she gives up on a high school football captain, which leads to all kinds of interesting fights, a la Back to the Future and other movies. But you get the idea. It's a dumb analogy, but here's what I'm trying to say. The current incumbent vendor of your prospective customers is the high school football captain, the big jock, and everything's great, and it's a great relationship, and we chose this relationship because they service our needs well. But if we can start to inject on a weekly basis our little messages, these little dumb postcards and emails, and we can start to put a few cracks in the foundation, we can show that there's greener grass on the other side, and when they have a problem with their vendor, they look at us and go, wow, that person, that company, that organization, they seem to have their stuff all together because they're seeing our very best face forward in our marketing. Not trying to say that we're lying to people and we're not good, but we're putting a good face forward. I'm saying we've got an identity and we're letting them know what it is. And we make their current situation over time seem worse and worse, and we make the opportunity to switch to us seem better and better. But it does take time, okay? So you've seen this before, the accelerated discontentment chart. We've got the black line, which represents a typical level of contentment or discontentment with the situation. Down here at the bottom, it says bliss. That means I'm so happy with my situation, I can barely stand it. Up here at the top, we've got the red line where it says I've had it. And everything in between in terms of discontentment. It seems a little bit weird that good, bliss, is down at the bottom, and bad, I've had it, is at the top. But this is accelerated discontentment. So discontentment is what we're trying to push people to. And over time, which is the horizontal axis, we see that their level of contentment ebbs and flows based on incidences. And these incidences are things that happen in the relationship that cause them to not be happy, or in some cases to be happy. Like what? Well, if it's the captain of the cheerleader squad, right, he made a joke in front of his friends at her expense, or he tried to take advantage of her, or he decided he was going to go do stuff with his buddies and leave her, you know, home at the last minute when she was expecting to go do something. And these incidences cause her to not like that guy. And with your incumbent vendor, it's things that they do. Maybe the delivery was late, or the prices were too high, or the invoicing was messed up, or the salesperson was rude, or the quality was suspect, or there was some issue that caused them to have problems. And every time one of these incidences happen, their discontentment goes up. But it always kind of tends back down towards the middle, right? Down here at this fine level. And it tends towards that because people inherently do not have the ability to stay high or low for very long. It's really hard to stay mad at your spouse for a long time. I've tried it before. Something happens, it's stupid, it's always my fault, my pride gets in the way, I get angry, and I can stay mad at my wife for, I think my record is like an hour and a half. And that's not even really true. It's more like 14 minutes. And my kid comes home with his report card incident, right? Not good, and so we put some things in place, and I get mad, I get upset, but it's hard to stay mad, right? It's also hard to stay happy for a long time. You know, the Mavericks win the championship in 2011, and 2012 rolls along, and it's like, man, why aren't you winning the championship again? And the feeling passes, and you always sort of tend back towards this sort of homeostasis, hunky-dory, things are fine. You know, not good, not bad, just fine kind of a situation. Well, here's what happens is we inject and as we introduce a frequent marketing campaign. I want you to notice these pink triangles at the bottom. They represent consistency of marketing efforts. Okay? The frequency is not that high, maybe about once per month, but the consistency is there. So that's good. And what happens is when these incidences occur now, their discontentment is actually a little higher than it would have otherwise been. Okay? So we're accelerating their discontentment. When the first issue hits, it's a little bit higher. The second one is quite a bit higher. The third one hits, it's quite a bit higher. But you'll notice we didn't get them to I've had it any sooner than we otherwise would have, and that's because our frequency isn't high enough. But if they do get to the I've had it point, and we've had this much consistency, pink triangles, pink line, then we've got a pretty good shot at being invited to at least have a discussion with them when they decide to make a change. But what we want to do is up that. And now we've got not just consistency, we've also got frequency. And the green triangles represent a much higher frequency than what we've got with the pink ones. And now you'll see what happens is if we start to hit them weekly with these mailers and emails and so forth, by the time that first incident happens, just 3 or 4 months into the campaign, what normally would have seemed like a 3-level incident now becomes a 5 or a 6. And what would have been a 2-level incident becomes a 6 or 7. And what would have been a 5-level incident now becomes a 10. I've had it. I've got to do something. And we've accelerated their discontentment, not only to want to use us, but to call us sooner than they would have if left to their own devices without our marketing message. And you see how this works? This is why the frequency is so important. But the key things you got to take away from this are a couple. Number one, it takes time. This is going to take time, effort, and yes, money to achieve. If you look at the green line, and that is your marketing efforts, that is at the bottom, that's your efforts, and the green is the results of your efforts, the line. Here's what we see. It was about 2 years before we got them to do business with us. We spent all that time priming the well and pumping and pumping and pumping and pumping before it actually worked. And if we quit pumping and we quit priming, halfway through, we lose all the momentum that we had. The other thing that you've got to take away from this are the exclamation points on this chart, meaning specifically, you as a marketer have no control at all of when those incidences are going to occur. They're outside. They're third party. They're not triggered by you. What you're trying to do is make sure that when those incidences do occur, that you've adequately positioned yourself to be a viable option to switch to, or to at least think about, right? And we have marketers that very arrogantly assume that they can make people want to switch. But I'm telling you, if their current relationship is perceived as good, it's not going to happen. But those incidences will occur. I mean, think about everything in life. Everything in life has its ups and downs. And you have your discouragement moments and your non-discouragement moments, right? Whether it be relationships with your spouse or your kids, whether it be the things that you own, technology or otherwise, they all have ups and downs. I've got a computer here. It's great. Most of the time I love it, except for when I try to plug a laptop computer into it and the ports don't work. And when the hard drive is sufficiently small enough that I can't jam a bunch of junk on it, it runs out of hard drive space and I have to, take stuff off of it. These incidences occur, but they're hard for you as a marketer to predict or to control, okay? So we like to create what we call a knockdown list. In addition to this hopper system where we're going to go out and hit these, build these lists and hit them over and over and over again with 36 or 50 or whatever mailers per year, we also like to put in place what's called a knockdown list. And what we want to do here is identify a set of prospects, a subset of prospects, and you want to look at it and say, which ones do we know would be good customers? In other words, if we were to get the business of this customer, that would be a great account for us, okay? Based on mostly sales volume, right? If they're gonna spend a lot of money, put them on notice that you want their business. Send them a letter, call them up, say, hey, I just want you to know I'm coming after you. We've got something good here. I know you don't really know much about us. I just want you to know you're going to be hearing from us. And it doesn't matter if it takes you a week or a month or a year or 10 years. We're coming after you, and we're not going to stop because what we have to offer is that much better, and it's going to be that much of an advantage to you to do business with us. Put them on notice. Hit them with the regular hopper system. They get the weekly mailers just like everybody, but then on top of that, hit them with regular lumpy mailers or deliveries. What we're trying to do is put deposits into their emotional bank accounts. When I say lumpy mailers, I'm talking about mailing them stuff. Not a postcard, that's part of the regular hopper system. I'm talking on top of that, in addition to that, hitting them with stuff, okay? So this is something we put together for our company. This is years ago. 3 fairy tales you'll hear from box suppliers, even honest ones. And we put 15 of these postcards in place, and we sent them out over and over and over, and we let them know that we've got custom boxes on your dock in just 4 hours guaranteed. Lots of box suppliers talk about their great customer service, but at Banner, we deliver your boxes in 4 hours or less, and we prove we've got the best service, because if it's not, we'll give it to you for free. Then we put together a box, because this is a box company, and they can make boxes for cheap. A challenge to purchasing agents who would never dream of changing box suppliers. And then when you open this box, what goes in it? Answer. Anything you want. You can put typical stuff like mugs or slinkies or radios or pens. We did that for a while. Then we got a little bit more aggressive, and we started putting things like, a remote controlled fart machine or an electronic shocking glider or a giant Hershey bar, which actually needed a larger box. Then we even got more creative. On 4th of July, we put fireworks in the box. We can't mail that, it's illegal, but we can drop it off and have the salesperson put it on their desk. You think they're going to notice that? Somebody dropped off fireworks. That is really cool and weird and unexpected and awesome. And then we ran a campaign that talked about how our pricing was, the reality was our pricing was high, but on a overall cost of doing business with us basis, we were very, very low. So we put together one of these boxes like the one I showed you a minute ago, the yellow box, and we filled it with pennies. And it weighed over 70 pounds full of pennies. And it said on the top, if you're trying to save 1 cent on your boxes, I've got good news for you. And then a box full of 70 pounds of pennies. Try dropping that off and see if you get noticed or not. This company made over $2 million by buying 6,000 Snuggies and dropping them off to their customers, and then going back a few days later and dropping off 5 to 10 more Snuggies so that everybody in the office could have one. It was amazing what happened, okay? So maybe you've seen this before. This is... Sorry, but I got a little distracted. This is a book called Green Eggs and Ham. This was my son's favorite book when he was a little kid. Is my oldest son. I've got 6 kids. The oldest one's name is Sam, so he loved this book. Sam I Am was the name of the character. His name was Sam, so I'd read this to him, and I finally recorded it on audio tape because he wanted to read it so much, and I just said bing when he needed to turn the page. But you remember this book, Would You Like Green Eggs and Ham? And the prospect says, I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not want them, Sam I Am. And then he comes back and says, would you like them here or there? He says, would not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I Am. And then Sam I Am comes back the next day and says, how about in a box or with a fox or with a mouse in a house or in a train or in the rain? And he goes over and over through all these different elements. And finally, the prospect says, you know what? I'll try it. If you'll leave me alone, I'll try it. And he finds out once he tries it. I think it's critical you understand what green eggs and ham is and why it's green and not just regular ham. And it's not because it rhymes, because green eggs and ham doesn't rhyme any better than regular colored eggs and ham. But it's because the green eggs and ham is something that looks at first like it's not that attractive, like you wouldn't want to eat it. It looks like it's not any good. Just like your products don't look that good to your prospective buyers. And it's not because they're inherently bad, it's because they've got something else already. But after he tries it, he says, Sam I Am, I would eat green eggs and ham here or there. I'd eat it in the rain, in the train, in the box, in the fox, in the house with the mouse. I'd eat it here, I'd eat it there, I'd eat it anywhere. I love green eggs and ham. Thank you, Sam I Am. But it was the persistence. And it's a children's story that we forget. when we become adults, because we want people to fall over and buy from us on the third time we ask them. And if they don't, we give up and we quit and we pout. But life says, and Dr. Seuss says, because he just understands life, you got to keep going. You got to try some different angles. Okay? Got to try it. Keeping the faith. You have to have faith in the principles, commit for the long term. Remember the question, what were your other options? Make sure you're hitting different hot buttons. That's the different approaches. House, mouse, fox, box, rain, train. Different hot buttons. Make sure your stay looks consistent for branding purposes. Remember, none of your competitors are going to even come close to putting this much effort into it. Remember, green eggs in ham. That's how you do this. That is the way you effectively market business to business. And that's it. That's what I have for you today. Do you have any questions? If you do, type them into the box, and I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, we're done. Let's see what you got here, if anything. I got a question that says, how is accelerating the discontentment in homeowners different than doing so with business? And the answer is it's not any different at all. The difference is that you generally have to start with a lot larger swath. It's not as cost effective, right, to do it to homeowners unless you start getting into bigger budgets of advertising. But it's just a little bit harder. But the principle is exactly the same. It doesn't change one iota. It's the same thing. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thanks for participating today. We may or may not have another webinar next week. I haven't actually checked the calendar, but I'll do that. And I think we do. I think we got a strategic marketing webinar next week because we will be off the week of Thanksgiving. So we'll be back with you next week. We'll talk to you then. Bye now.